one more crazy story for the books. So I lived with my grandparents for quite some time, and my grandpa was actually held at gunpoint. So he pulled in the driveway one night from golfing, and we had a cat at the time, black and white, named Sylvia. Well, normally Sylvia would greet him. So, like, he pulled his truck in, the garage door would go down and come back up, and he just thought it was Sylvia, like, didn't think much of it. Well, when he stepped out of the truck, there was a gun pointing to his head. And the guy said, "I want your guns and money." Well, we didn't know this at the time, but after like the detectives dealing with everything that they deal with, they questioned this guy, and he said that he had walked around the house prior to hiding in the bush and seen my grandpa had like hunting stuff on the walls and guns and stuff like that, and said he knew he had money. So, he held him at gunpoint or whatever, and then he tied his hands behind his back with zip ties. And my grandpa was trying to figure out how to get out of this, because meanwhile, me and my grandma were inside the house while this was all going down. And the guy wanted to go inside the house and kept telling my grandpa, I want to go in there with you. And he was like, "You can't go in there. My wife and granddaughter's in there." And blah, blah, blah. So my grandpa ended up faking a heart attack and scared the guy off. And he took off. Well, then a few days later, this guy and his girl got into a huge fight, and somehow the girl called 911, and they were able to collect DNA from the garage floor, which matched the spit on my grandpa's floor, which is how they knew he was the guy that held my grandpa at gunpoint. But the crazy thing is, this guy worked for an insurance company, so he knew in the system, like, who had money and who had things that were valuable, and that's the houses that he held up that night. He held up a girl in Bluffton, which is a city close to us. She was pregnant, put her into labor because he threw her into a bush. He held up another elderly man that my grandpa actually knew, I think in like the Walpock area, and crazy. So he obviously went to prison, and my grandpa had to go to court and everything, and then my grandpa was receiving checks for the longest time. This guy was like having to pay him back because he stole like $200 out of his wallet, and then like spent some money on some credit cards, and but yeah, it was pretty crazy. It was all over the news, and my grandpa like was a heart patient. Oh, that was part of it. So he was a heart patient. They had nitro pills, in his pocket for when he does have symptoms. He just pops one of them bad boys in and like can help him or whatever. And the guy knew what those were, and when he was going through my grandpa's pockets, and sure enough, my grandpa was able to be smart enough to fake a heart attack, and the guy got scared, luckily, and other than like his hands being pretty bloody from being zip tied, and he fell on his knee because he was in pitch black in the garage trying to figure out how to get his hands out of these zip ties so he can get inside the house to make sure the guy didn't mess with us, but it all worked out.